Gary is a young, lonely man who lost his wife 8 years ago. During this time, he has come to terms with what happened, but all his attempts to build a personal life have failed. His latest date is no exception. His girlfriend tells him they are breaking up, and Gary, relieved, heads home. There, his 11-year-old daughter, Emma, awaits him. Gary enters her room to remind her that they are running late, but puberty rears its head. Emma asks her father to close the door and wait for her outside. After finishing her Universe model, Emma finally gets into the car. However, on the way, she continues to be rude to her father. First, she demands they run a red light and then asks to stop so she can give a sandwich to a homeless person. This behavior unsettles Gary, and he loses focus. At that moment, another car crashes into their sky blue SUV. A red-haired girl runs up to the car, trying to help Emma. While she calms the teenager, a frightened Gary rushes to get his daughter's backpack to retrieve her favorite toy. Only a plush wolf can solve Emma's main problem, saving her from a panic attack. But to Gary's surprise, Emma manages without the toy. The girl successfully cheers up the injured girl. Emma is not even frightened by the fact that this girl is the one responsible for the accident. A couple of days later, Mary, as the girl is called, comes to the victim's house. She gives Emma a book that she loved reading as a child and asks Gary for forgiveness for what happened. Gary invites Mary inside, but she unexpectedly turns and runs away. For the first time in many years, Gary decides to chase after her, feeling that this is his destiny. Mary gives in. She tells him her name and agrees to have coffee. During their conversation, Gary admits that his wife passed away 8 years ago and that he has been trying to be a good father to Emma ever since. The lunch doesn't go as planned. Gary injures his hand, and Mary has to come to his rescue. Observing this, Emma suspects that their life might soon change. Mary disappears very suddenly, not even saying goodbye. But Gary catches up with her again and invites her to dinner to get to know her better. The next day, the couple meets and, after a short walk, decides to go to a restaurant. To impress the beauty, Gary takes her to his favorite Italian cafe, but unexpectedly, the girl gets scared and runs away, insisting they choose another place. The couple finds a bar hidden in a basement, and after getting a bottle of red wine, they settle at a table. The date becomes so pleasant that they lose track of time and don't notice when evening falls. Gary talks about his life, and Mary about how she moved from Chicago to Australia. Feeling bold, Gary leans in to kiss his date, but she behaves strangely again. Mary abruptly gets up and runs away without explaining anything. Mary runs through the streets as fast as she can, pushing passers-by aside. Running into her house, the girl quickly strips off her clothes and rushes into the basement. A heavy iron door closes behind her, and iron shutters lower on the windows and at the exit. When Gary returns home, he encounters a new problem. Emma attempts to take her own life again, locking herself in the bathroom. The man manages to get his daughter to the hospital. Sarah, his late wife's sister, arrives there as well, trying to support her relative during this difficult time. She asks Gary not to blame himself and to find a good psychologist for the girl who can help her. A couple of hours later, Emma regains consciousness and her father is allowed into the room. The next day, he takes the girl to the psychiatrist again, but Emma refuses to openly answer the doctor's questions and withdraws even more. On the way home, Gary tries to talk to his daughter, but she refuses to discuss what happened. Emma locks herself in her room, hugs her plush wolf, and starts reading the book that Mary gave her. This helps the girl distract herself a little from thoughts of leaving. At breakfast, Gary tries to talk to his daughter again, but she leaves the table, unwilling to listen to his banal persuasion. Afterward, Gary takes Emma to Sarah's house to go on a date at the request of his relatives. But as soon as the widower is left alone in the car, he breaks down and releases his emotions. This time, Gary meets a Chinese woman. The young people have to communicate through a translator, and Gary realizes that the girl simply decided to practice learning the language. Their conversation turns out to be very boring and silly, and Gary regrets wasting his time. Gary looks for a way to escape the unsuccessful date, and unexpectedly, Mary comes to his aid. The girl bumps into him and spills hot tea on him. The couple goes outside, and Mary tries to fix the situation by wiping the stain with napkins. Finally, the beauty agrees to explain her recent escape. She admits that she likes Gary, but her life is too complicated to start a relationship. Gary is sure that these are just excuses. He has many problems in his life too, but that doesn't stop him. He talks about how he wanted to escape reality after his wife's death, but only made things worse. Gary tries to convince Mary to give him a chance, ignoring the red bag she hides under the bench. As usual, Mary bolts to run away, but this time she gives Gary a farewell kiss, regretting that they can't be together. Perhaps Gary would no longer chase after his girlfriend, but she accidentally takes his car keys. The man has to catch a taxi and follow Mary to get back his property and find out why the girl keeps running away. On the way, Gary warns Sarah that he'll be late, and his relative wishes Gary a hot night. Who could have guessed that her words would be prophetic? Mary notices the pursuer right at the doorstep. At that moment, the girl is dragging cages with live chickens into the house. She orders Gary to come in and lock the door behind him. The girl is furious that Gary followed her, but she agrees to reveal her secret so that he finally leaves her alone. Mary locks herself behind a heavy door, and Gary approaches the observation window. His eyes widen with fear and surprise. This is something Gary definitely did not expect. Gary spends the night sitting in the kitchen, holding a knife. At dawn, the shutters open, but Mary asks her friend not to leave so she can explain everything to him. The girl looks terrible. She's not wearing any clothes, and her body is smeared with red spots and chicken feathers. Wrapping herself in a blanket, she sits at the table to tell Gary her terrible secret. Several years ago, Mary was vacationing in Prague with her husband. During the trip, the girl was bitten by a stray dog, and later she realized something was wrong with her. First, Mary ate her husband. After him, she devoured an Italian family who were also traveling the world. After that, Mary realized she was dangerous, and now, every full moon, the girl buys animals and locks herself in the basement so as not to harm anyone. Gary listens to the story, keeping the knife ready, but Mary doesn't intend to harm her friend. She asks him only one thing, not to tell anyone about her secret so she won't have any problems. The man flees from his insane girlfriend, ignoring her screams, but he hears her say that their meeting was a sign. On the day of the accident, she was listening to a song that her tasty husband really loved. Returning home, Mary gathers the necessary things and the surviving chicken and plans to flee the city. Meanwhile, Gary completely loses his mind. He arrives at Sarah's house and, without explaining anything, falls into the pool. Before leaving, the girl visits an old lady in a nursing home to give her gifts and say goodbye. Mary can tell her what happened because within an hour, the patient won't remember a single word. But despite her illness, the old friend gives the girl valuable advice: not to run from reality and allow herself to be happy. Picking up his daughter, Gary offers to spend the day together and have fun, but he soon regrets this. Emma chooses an Italian restaurant, which reminds Gary of the devoured tourists. Gary dreams of getting out of there as soon as possible, and finally, they return to the car. At that moment, Mary's Jeep crashes into them again, and accidentally pressing the gas, Gary drives into the Italian restaurant. Emma recognizes her old acquaintance and approaches her to thank her for the book. This frightens Gary, but despite his hysteria, the girl asks her father to invite Mary to dinner. The girl accepts the invitation and arrives on the appointed evening. In Emma's presence, the couple pretends that everything is normal between them, but as soon as the girl leaves, the lovers start quarreling and accusing each other. Dinner takes place in a tense atmosphere, but Emma tries to find topics for conversation and learn more about the guest. The girl tells Mary about her psychotherapist, who is not helping her at all, and her older friend advises her to find someone she can talk to openly. Mary goes into the girl's room to say goodbye, and for the first time in many years, Emma is interested in talking to someone other than her plush wolf. Gary likes watching this, but he asks his strange girlfriend to leave. Before leaving, Mary gives the girl a disc with her favorite music. Mary leaves, but Gary runs after her to decide what they should do next. He admits that he feels the connection that has developed between them, but he is afraid of what happens behind the iron door once a month. That night, Gary takes his daughter to Sarah's, then drives to Mary's house. The couple spends the night together, not knowing what lies ahead. In the morning, the lovers have breakfast in Mary's kitchen, and the girl enjoys how easy it is with her new boyfriend. The only thing that worries her is Emma. Mary is sure they should tell her everything, but she doesn't understand how to do it. Gary tries to cheer up his girlfriend by drawing her portrait, and it works. Mary laughs, pushing aside heavy thoughts. After talking to Mary, Emma takes her advice and asks her psychotherapist to recommend another doctor. The girl admits that she cannot be open in their conversations. From that day on, Mary spends a lot of time at Gary and Emma's house. The three of them behave like a real family, helping each other in everything and trying to be together every free minute. And only once a month do they part. Gary takes his daughter to Sarah's, and he stays with his girlfriend to help her get through the night of the full moon. The man begins to understand chickens and selects old and sick ones for the girl so she won't feel guilty. He spends the whole night sitting behind the iron door, and in the morning he meets Mary with a robe, hot tea, and helps her wash off the traces of the night's hunt. One day, Gary decides to tell his daughter everything. He convinces Mary that Emma will be able to accept it, and she won't forgive them if they lie to her forever. But before that, Gary decides to introduce Mary to Sarah and her family. The group arrives at a barbecue, and at first, everyone has a great time. No one even notices that the local cat reacts aggressively to the guest. Mary impresses everyone with her smile and beauty. Sarah repeats many times that they are very happy to see Gary's lover, and everyone hopes that he will finally be happy. In the midst of the party, Gary notices something is wrong. The girl snaps at him and goes into the house after her boyfriend offers her to hold Sarah's baby. The man follows his girlfriend to find out how he can help her. And Mary confesses that she has suspected for several weeks that she might be pregnant. Gary is delighted with this news, but Mary does not share his joy. She fears she might harm the baby, and it's unclear what the child will be when born, a human or a wolf. After the dessert Mary brought with her, the guests go home. The lovers prepare to tell Emma everything and to choose the right moment. The next day they go to a deserted reserve far from the city. The tourists set up camp in a beautiful spot, and in the evening by the fire, Gary starts a conversation with his daughter. He takes Mary's hand and prepares to make an unusual confession, but his beloved interrupts him. She tells the girl about her pregnancy, but decides to keep her terrifying secret for now. Emma and Mary watch a beautiful sunrise, and after breakfast, the family gets ready to head home to return to the city by evening. But soon, the great mood in the group deteriorates. Gary can't start the car. Mary begins to panic. There's very little time left until the next full moon. Gary leaves the woman and his daughter in the car and goes off to find help, or at least get a cell signal. Emma doesn't understand why her father and Mary are so anxious. She confides in the woman that this is the first time she's seen her father happy, and she wishes it could be like this forever. Gary returns several hours later and informs them that he's called for roadside assistance. But it's obvious that no one will come to such a remote place. They'll have to wait a long time for help. When the clock strikes 5 in the evening, Mary realizes that she can't delay any longer. She asks her friend to lock himself and Emma in the car and not to come out until morning. After saying goodbye, the woman runs off to be far away from the family and not to harm them. That night, Gary follows his friend's instructions. He locks himself and Emma in the car and doesn't even let his daughter out to use the bathroom. When the girl starts getting angry at her father's stubbornness, Gary decides to tell her everything. He begins from the first date with Mary, but his story is interrupted by the arrival of a Jeep. 2 men approach the car and offer help, but Gary asks them to leave. After these words, the rescuers' behavior changes drastically. They begin to frighten Emma and bang on the car, demanding that the tourists come outside. Gary holds his daughter close, hoping the criminals will leave them alone, but the men don't get the chance to leave. A huge she-wolf appears from the darkness, killing the intruders before Emma and her father's eyes. The attack lasts only a few minutes, but during this time, the predator breaks the car window. Gary watches the she-wolf in horror, fearing she'll soon turn on them. But something strange happens. After dealing with the attackers, Mary in wolf form looks at Gary and Emma and, with a piercing howl, runs off, taking one of the attackers' heads with her. Gary knows this is the perfect moment to tell all. He explains to his daughter that it was their Mary who changes her appearance a bit once a month. Emma starts having a panic attack, and this time her plush wolf only makes things worse. Gary has to remember how he used to sing to his daughter years ago, and only his song helps calm her down. At dawn, Mary returns to the car. Gary meets her with a warm blanket, and the woman falls into her lover's arms, realizing she committed a crime during the night. Mary catches Emma's gaze, but doesn't dare speak to her. After charging the battery from the criminal's car, Gary heads back to the city. Emma remains silent for a long time, but to support her friend, she plays a song from the gifted disc, one that speaks about accepting someone as they are. Mary walks down the aisle in a white dress, her belly already large. The man smiles as he takes her hands, and the preacher begins his speech. At that moment, the woman's belly bursts open and a monster emerges, slaughtering all the guests. Mary wakes up from this nightmare, but her fear doesn't go away. She goes down to the basement where Gary is trying to clean up the traces of the hunt. The couple moves into a new larger house and Mary's home is put up for sale, but the woman feels they've rushed things. Gary tries to calm his girlfriend, but he's just as nervous, watching videos about wolves. The man fears Mary might give birth to 10 wolf cubs, but the man has to put his worries aside when Caroline, with whom he's supposed to work, enters the office. While the man is at work, Mary and Emma are tidying up the new house. But noticing that the girl is sad, Mary invites her to the beach to relax a bit. Emma is also going through a tough time. She's transferring to a new school and will have to make new friends. Her parents try to support her, but she asks her father to let her and Mary spend some time alone. After sending his daughter to school, Gary shows his fiancée the surprise he's prepared for her. The man has equipped a stylish basement, hung a screen to play wildlife videos, and bought lots of dog toys so his beloved wouldn't get bored after the hunt. But none of this impresses Mary. She's concerned about safety, and the door seems too flimsy to her. Witnessing the family quarrel are Sarah and her husband, but Gary refuses to explain anything. He asks his relatives to leave, promising to tell them everything later. Mary leaves and returns to the house that's up for sale. She does everything she can to scare off potential buyers with terrifying stories. After this, the woman picks up Mary from school, albeit a bit late. She's also hurrying to a doctor's appointment to convince him to adjust the delivery date as far from the full moon as possible. The doctor doesn't understand why the date is so important to the woman, and he suggests she trust nature. And to help Mary calm down a bit, the doctor sends her to prenatal classes. This only angers the woman more. She doesn't understand why a she-wolf needs to study breathing techniques and do exercises. She confesses to her fiancé that she's afraid of giving birth to a monster or even eating him after delivery. To bring the woman back to her senses, Gary sends her with other group members to a cafe. But this doesn't help. Mary leaves after being bombarded with questions about the baby. To relieve stress, the woman hides in the car and eats a raw chicken leg. Gary and Mary are called to the school because of an incident with their daughter. The mother of one of the students accuses Emma of aggression, but the girl insists that she was defending Abigail, her friend who is being bullied. Mary stands up for her daughter and says a few words to the lying pair, after which they leave the girl alone. After the school meeting, Mary decides to have an ultrasound to find out who will be born, a wolf or a human. Just in case, the woman prepares chloroform. If the doctor sees a monster on the screen, she plans to eliminate the witness. But everything goes perfectly. The future parents are shown a baby who is no different from an ordinary child. After the procedure, the woman calms down and sells the house. She allows herself to relax and listen to music with the baby, not knowing that at that moment, his eyes open. The house is ready for the baby's arrival, and everyone eagerly awaits the birth. Mary devotes all her free time to interacting with Emma, and the two of them examine the rabbit that the girl brought home from school. The day before the full moon, Gary takes his daughter to Sarah's, and while no one is bothering them, the man decides to practice. He brings a doll into the basement. Mary isn't thrilled that her fiancé thinks she's stupid. Even in wolf form, she can tell a doll from a human, but she understands that Gary is doing all this for her and for their future child. As the sun sets, Gary uses the remote to close the door and leaves Mary in the basement. He connects his smartphone to the camera and watches with interest as the woman turns into a wolf and begins the hunt. Unexpectedly, Sarah calls the man, asking him to bring Emma's pills. The girl had a seizure after watching a show about predators. Gathering everything necessary, the man presses the remote button and opens the door. At the doorstep, Gary realizes he's messed everything up. The exit from the house remained blocked, and instead, he opened the door to the basement. Horrified, Gary rushes back and sees that it is already too late. The wolf has escaped from the shelter and started wrecking the house. The man has to find a place where he can hide from the predator. But all the while, Sarah keeps calling, and Gary looks for a way to get out of the house. He tries to run while the werewolf is destroying the crib, but he can't remain unnoticed. The wolf starts chasing him. Gary's hopes are dashed. This time, the wolf doesn't recognize him. His attempts to talk about how close they are or play their favorite song also fail, so the man has only one option left. He throws the school rabbit to the wolf and runs out of the house. In the yard, Sarah and Emma are already waiting for him, but Gary doesn't let them inside. He hands over the pills and asks the woman to take his daughter back. At dawn, Gary returns to the house. This time, he doesn't embrace his fiancée, surveying the havoc she caused. Mary cleans up the mess she made during the night's escape and constantly thinks that she should leave and let Gary be. But Emma distracts her from these thoughts. The girl is making a playlist of her stepmother's favorite songs and those of her deceased husband for the baby. Gary takes his daughter to school and crashes into a car again. This time, it's Caroline's car, the girl from his office. While the man discusses the incident, Emma is invited to talk with the psychologist, and Mary continues cleaning the house from the traces of the last full moon. At some point, the woman's nerves give out, and she tries to run away. But changing her mind halfway, Mary returns to deal with the problem instead of running from it. The psychologist suggests Emma use metaphors to describe what's bothering her. The girl gets lucky, she tells the specialist the truth about her werewolf stepmother, and the doctor tries to understand what exactly the girl means. Mary finds a solution. She returns to the sold house and asks the new owners to give her the iron door. Unfortunately, the elderly couple is indifferent to her problem, and they refuse the woman, threatening to call the police. After school, Emma refuses to go home and tells her father she will spend time with Abigail. Gary finds it hard to accept this, and he spies on the girls in the cafe, leading people to mistake him for a typical city madman. A fight breaks out between the father and Emma because of this, and the girl again refuses to go home. She asks to be picked up from her friend's house in a couple of hours. After the failed operation with the door, Mary meets with an illegal arms dealer and buys a gun. The woman hopes that in case of danger, Gary will get rid of her and save the baby. When Gary arrives to pick up his daughter at the appointed time, he discovers that Abigail's mother is Caroline. The woman invites her colleague into her home, and he stays late, talking about their children. When the man finally returns home with his daughter, a fight breaks out between him and Mary. Gary accuses his fiancée of destroying the house, but the woman reminds him that she didn't hide the truth and that he knew living with her wouldn't be easy. Gary realizes he's wrong and returns to Mary's former house to get the door back. The elderly couple isn't happy to see him, but they offer him a barter. The man spends an active night with them and gets what he needs. Fortunately, they manage to agree on a large sum of money, and the door is ready to return to its owner. Meanwhile, Mary is looking for a backup plan, a deserted mine where she could give birth to the baby. Gary agrees to help, but first, he asks the woman to go to the window and watch the door being unloaded. The woman is delighted with such a gift, despite the inscription the elderly couple left on the door. Now she's sure that nothing will threaten her loved ones and the future baby. To celebrate the occasion, Gary proposes to his beloved, using the door instead of an engagement ring. Life is getting back on track. Emma is having a great time at school, and everyone in the house is eagerly awaiting the baby's arrival. Mary's mood improves as well, and she now happily attends prenatal classes and spends time with the family. Sarah invites the relatives over for dinner, but on the way, Mary notices that they are being followed and causes an accident. A few minutes later, everything becomes clear. Emma and Sarah had planned a surprise for the expectant parents, a baby shower. Mary's friends from the nursing home gather in the yard, and the woman is truly happy. That is, until another guest appears at the door. Noticing his wife's anxiety, Gary approaches to find out what's going on. Mary introduces her fiancé to her old friend Anton, who has come to Australia to visit her. Gary immediately senses that there was a connection between Mary and Anton, and he doesn't like that Sarah invites the guy to join the others. But what makes Gary even more nervous is when Anton leaves Mary a note with the words, "Unleash your wolf." For the rest of the day, Gary questions his wife about her relationship with Anton, but Mary assures him there's nothing to worry about. However, it seems Anton doesn't agree. He arrives at the couple's house before sunset and admits that he also became a werewolf after being bitten by Mary. The visitor tells them how he has spent the last few years, but time passes quickly and Mary realizes they're about to transform. To protect Gary and Emma, Mary drags Anton into the basement and the heavy door closes behind the werewolves. Approaching the observation window, Gary realizes that something even more horrifying than a hunt has occurred. Left alone in the basement, the wolves have begun mating. When the heavy door is unlocked in the morning, Gary throws Anton out of the house without explanation. As he leaves, Anton manages to give Mary his address, saying he'll be waiting for her. Returning to his fiancée, Gary tells her what he saw last night, but Mary doesn't remember anything. She is terrified that she might have contracted some disease, and she rushes to the shower to wash off the filth. Gary begins to lose his sanity from the sheer number of events in his life. He leaves, determined to end this once and for all. Breaking all the rules, the man speeds to the hotel to confront Anton, but on the way, he gets into another car accident. Suddenly, Gary spots a homeless man and recalls the day he and Mary first met. To thank the homeless man for the fateful encounter, Gary takes him to a store, but instead of paying for the purchase, his new friend suggests they run away. The fleeing thieves are noticed by Sarah's husband, who suspects Gary of having mental problems. The need to unburden himself takes over, and Gary tells his life story to his homeless friend. It seems to him that the stranger can control the future and even knows what Gary's deceased wife thinks about it. While the fiancé runs around the city with the homeless man, Mary goes to Anton and demands that he leave her and her family alone. She declares that she wants no part of any wolfish freedom with a packmate, and if he interferes with her, she is ready to fight for her pack. As soon as Mary leaves, the eccentric Gary arrives at Anton's. He repeats his wife's words and demands that the uninvited guests leave them alone before something terrible happens. After hearing him out, Anton promises to leave and never appear in his old friend's life again. Mary and Gary manage to have a talk. The man promises to forgive what happened the night before, and both hope that peace will soon come to their lives. There's very little time left until the baby is born, and Gary counts the days of the full moon when it's best not to take risks. He asks his fiancée to take care of herself and not to worry so as not to provoke labor at an inopportune moment. Gary takes on all the responsibilities, and while he's driving Emma to school, the girl asks her father to tell Aunt Sarah about Mary so they can help. Emma confesses that she discussed it with her stepmother, and she agreed to do it, but a bit later. Gary receives a call from the police, and Detective Kate Ross asks him to come to the station to clarify a few things. The man immediately knows what it's about, and on the way, he prepares his answers. He calls Mary, who is lying in the bath, to warn her that he'll be late for work. He decides not to mention the call from the cops. Gary tries to appear calm, and when asked about the men who died in the reserve, he pretends to know nothing. He admits that he saw them and used their services to start the car, but what happened to the helpers afterward is unknown to him. Detective Ross's assistant recognizes Gary. They attend the same prenatal classes. The policeman also asks Gary questions, and he notices that the man is holding something back. Gary returns home and tries not to show his fiancée that he's worried. But, as luck would have it, another problem arises. Sarah arrives at the house to discuss the theft incident. While Gary assures his relatives that there's no basement in his house, Emma and Mary bring home a pig that the woman will eat during the full moon. This raises even more questions for Sarah, and Emma insists that her father tell the truth. The girl begins the story, but Sarah doesn't believe the werewolf tale and thinks they're trying to distract her from the main issue. Sarah doesn't believe the story even when Mary herself confirms it. She gets offended, thinking they're trying to deceive her, and the woman demands that Emma be given to her care until the family returns to a sane state. The guests leave, but they meet the police in a tow truck at the door, taking Gary's car for examination. Mary learns that her fiancé has already been questioned, and she starts to panic from the stress. The couple tries to figure out what to do next. Suddenly, Mary remembers that there's an illegal gun left in the car's glove compartment. She realizes that their only chance is to flee to the abandoned mine and wait out the dangerous moment. Gary loads things into the car when Sarah arrives again to take Emma away. Chaos ensues, with everyone shouting and talking over each other, but everyone falls silent when they turn to Mary. It's time to give birth. Mary is taken to the hospital, but there's less than a day left until the full moon. Gary tries to calm his fiancée, while Sarah stays with Emma in the waiting room. Sarah's husband assures her that they did the right thing and couldn't abandon the family in a difficult moment. A few hours pass, but nothing happens. The baby doesn't appear. Mary is given new medications, and Gary suspects something is wrong. The man tries to get details from the doctor and learns that Mary is being prepared for a cesarean section. Gary realizes this is too dangerous. During the transformation into a wolf, the stitches could come apart, but he can't say this to the doctor. While the father talks to the doctor, Emma supports her stepmother by playing her favorite song. Finally, Gary returns and the family decides to escape and go to the basement. Emma distracts the nurse on duty, and Gary sneaks his fiancée past the station in a wheelchair, but the escapees are spotted. Staff and security begin the chase. Meanwhile, detectives arrive at the hospital. They also see the suspects fleeing, and Ross calls for backup to arrest them. Gary asks Sarah for the car, but it's already occupied. So the man hijacks a vehicle, and the relatives have to go with him to help save Mary. On the way, Sarah realizes that they were telling the truth. Mary starts transforming into a wolf several hours early. Gary has to hold her to keep her from eating anyone in the family. The fugitives run a red light and crash through everything in their path. To ease her stepmother's suffering, Emma plays music, and it works. Finally, the car stops in the yard, and Mary is carried into the house in their arms. At that moment, she tries to bite someone, but Gary convinces his fiancée to hold on a little longer. The men carry the werewolf down to the basement, and Gary orders everyone out. He leaves Mary alone, watching through the observation window. Finally, the werewolf stops screaming, and Gary announces to everyone that he's had a child, a wolf. A few minutes pass, but Gary sees that the she-wolf has no strength left to approach the newborn, so the man decides to take the risk and go down. Descending the stairs, Gary sings his fiancée's favorite song, and the she-wolf allows him to take the newborn in his arms. The happy family is together, rejoicing in the new life. A stunned Sarah and her husband approach the window, watching their strange relatives. It becomes clear to everyone that many frank conversations and decisions lie ahead, but no one yet suspects that the house is surrounded by dozens of police cars.